This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, is Bitcoin too volatile to be money? Now, I know right now a lot of you are very stressed out by Bitcoin's fiat exchange rate price action, and I think at times like this, it's very important, rather than being glued to the screen, rather than focusing on short-term price targets, to really understand and remind ourselves why we are here and how Bitcoin really works. So I'll be answering this question. It's a question from Cranberry Eater, as well as many of you. In this comment, he says Bitcoin is too speculative and volatile, and therefore is not a reliable store of value. So in order to talk about this, I'm going to expand this to a more general question, not just is Bitcoin too volatile to be a store of value, but is it too volatile to be money in general? And so we're going to actually look at all three functions of money. Money as a medium of exchange, money as a unit of account, and finally, money as a store of value. Medium of exchange is the most familiar function of money. This is what enables civilizations to escape from the barter system. I give you money and you give me something in return. This solves the so-called coincidence of wants problem, where maybe I have a bunch of apples and you have a bunch of chairs, and you would like my apples, but you don't want my chairs, etc. Money is the medium of exchange, and it enables trade at the local and at the global level. So medium of exchange, I give you some Bitcoin, you give me a hamburger. Now, a lot of people will be saying, well, you can't actually buy anything with Bitcoin. You couldn't buy a hamburger if you wanted to. And these are people who haven't been keeping up with the news. Overstock obviously accepts Bitcoin. Microsoft, I think their online store accepts Bitcoin. There are many merchants that accept Bitcoin. Tesla accepted Bitcoin for a short period of time. McDonald's, you can buy a burger with Bitcoin in El Salvador. Starbucks, likewise, accepting Bitcoin for that fabled coffee payment in El Salvador as well. You can pay using the Lightning Network. So Bitcoin is already being used as legal tender, as a medium of exchange. But it's important to recognize that we don't need government recognition in order for Bitcoin to still take on some of these characteristics or functions of money. If you're finding this video helpful so far, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. So what are some problems with Bitcoin as a medium of exchange? As we're seeing today, Bitcoin is very volatile. If I got paid $1,000 in Bitcoin at my job and I went straight to the grocery store, that Bitcoin might be worth $950 by the time I purchase my groceries. Of course, it also might be worth $1,050 by the time I purchase my groceries, because most of Bitcoin's volatility is to the upside. And this makes sense because Bitcoin has gone up a lot over the past 11 or 12 years. Now, if you live in a country with a very unstable local currency like Turkey, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, you'd probably still want to get paid in Bitcoin over your local currency, and you'd be willing to take on some of that Bitcoin volatility, simply because you know if you get paid in your local currency, especially in these hyperinflationary scenarios, that money will lose a lot of value, possibly even overnight, but certainly over a few days and a few weeks. As we'll also see, Bitcoin has become much less volatile over time and will continue to become less volatile. So the volatility problem with Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is not as large as you might think, and it is being slowly resolved as Bitcoin's volatility comes down. Part two of money, monetary functions, money as a unit of account. Money as a unit of account means we begin to think in terms of a certain currency. And so you can ask, how much does that burger cost? How much money do you make a year? This enables us to think in common units. And for a very common example, I know that blueberries are more expensive than bananas, simply because I don't need to know anything about the fruit themselves. I just measure the value of each using US dollars. I see how much they cost at the grocery store, and I compare blueberries to bananas using money as a unit of account. Now, I still don't naturally think in Bitcoin, though I'm increasingly trying to. You'll see on Twitter there are a lot of people who now have moved to 0% fiat. They are 100% in Bitcoin. And I think this is an interesting movement. Maybe we can cover it in a later video if you're interested. This is thinking in Bitcoin, using Bitcoin as your personal unit of account, even if it's not the country's unit of account yet. This is very helpful if you want to measure the opportunity cost of buying something instead of Bitcoin. So you have websites like this. If you bought Bitcoin instead of stupid stuff, you'd have this much money. So you can click here, you can play this game. If you bought Bitcoin instead of a GoPro Hero 3, you'd have almost $1 million. The original price was $299 in 2012. If you bought Bitcoin instead of a shake weight, you'd have $12 million. This was released in 2009. So this gives you an idea, another way of using Bitcoin as a unit of account and as a way of measuring the opportunity cost of what you spend your money on. Finally, and this is probably the most interesting case, is money as a store of value. A lot of people misunderstand what a store of value is, as we'll see. A store of value, though, the way it's defined by economists, it's something that preserves your purchasing power over long periods of time. So for example, when I was a kid, I used to buy Big Macs for, it was like 40 or 50 cents for a Big Mac. If instead I had kept that 50 cents, hid it under my mattress, and then walked into a McDonald's today, it would only buy about 1/10 of a Big Mac, depending where you are. So this shows that US dollars have not been a good store of value. In fact, they're down a huge percentage since I was a kid, the US dollar purchasing power. US dollar does not preserve your purchasing power over long periods of time. Something like gold is better. For example, an ounce of gold has bought you a nice men's suit or sort of an average horse for the past 400 years. So gold is one way of preserving your purchasing power. It's a store of value, though it hasn't been carrying out this function quite as well since 2009. I would suggest that that's because Bitcoin came on the scene in 2009, and Bitcoin has been stealing market share since then. Here's what's most important, and you'll always see this in my Bitcoin comments. I want to tell you what store of value is not. A store of value, Bitcoin is a store of value, does not mean that it's a short-term hedge against falling stock or asset prices. I always see these comments, look, stocks crashed and your Bitcoin crashed too. It's not a hedge, it's not a store of value. Well, this is not what a store of value means. Store of value is measured over long periods of time. No one would dispute that gold has functioned as a store of value, as we were saying, and yet even gold periodically crashes with the stock market, especially during a liquidity crisis. This happened in 2008 in the great financial crisis. Gold was crashing the whole first part of the crisis until the Fed really started money printing, then it recovered. Likewise, in March of 2020, when we had a true liquidity crisis as the pandemic was taking hold and even treasuries were selling off, gold sold off very sharply as well. So again, when I say Bitcoin is a store of value, I do not mean that it protects your purchasing power over a series of days or weeks. This is not what anyone means by store of value. Store of value needs to be measured over many years, probably decades or centuries. It's probably most accurate then to call Bitcoin an emerging store of value. It's on its way to becoming a store of value. I often just call it a store of value for shorthand because for me, it's already my favorite and most used store of value. Bitcoin, you can think of it as gold 2.0. It's like gold in many ways, but it's much easier to store, to transport, to verify. It has verifiable scarcity as well. And as such, Bitcoin is just a better technology. It's a better money technology, and so it's slowly taking market share from gold in the same way that gold took market share from glass beads and seashells and copper coins and silver coins. And as gold did this, the entire world converged on a gold standard by the 18th or 19th century, simply because gold was the hardest money around. The world did not converge on a gold standard because some government said we're now going to choose gold. It was rather the other way around. Governments chose gold as their standard simply because it was the hardest money around. And I think in coming decades, this is very important, the world is going to converge likewise to a Bitcoin standard. And again, this is not something we need legislators to do for us. This is something where legislators follow along with what the people already want and what the people are already doing. Bitcoin is now the hardest money around. It's even harder than gold. Hard, and by hard money, I mean very difficult to mine, to print, or to create. So the example of the US dollar, the US dollars are very soft money. You can print up any amount you want if you're the federal government or the US Treasury or the central bank. Just with the push of a button now, these are digital dollars. Gold is much better. It's a much harder form of money because it's difficult to produce more of. It's difficult and dangerous to mine. And as such, the global inventories, the above ground supply, only really increases by 1 or 2% a year. It's still an inflationary currency, but at a very low level. By contrast, it's much, much easier, as we said, to increase the supply of US dollars. In fact, 80% of all US dollars in existence were printed in the last 22 months. This is absolutely unbelievable, an unbelievable statistic. So Bitcoin is a harder form of money than even gold. It's impossible to ever mine more than 21 million Bitcoin, and probably 3 to 4 million have been permanently lost. And here's the difference between Bitcoin and regular commodities, or really anything else. When gold prices go up a lot, gold miners work much harder to mine more gold, and so they're able to somewhat bring a little bit more gold on the market. So we could say that gold has a somewhat elastic supply. We're using this economic term of elasticity, how the supply adjusts to price and demand. But when Bitcoin prices go up a lot, there's no way to mine more. It has a perfectly inelastic supply, unlike gold, unlike any other commodity. And so this is just driven by the very steady monetary policy of Bitcoin. 6.25 new Bitcoin are now being mined every 10 minutes on average, regardless of the price of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is very reliable in this way, and it's very hard money. It doesn't respond by printing more to higher prices. There's no equivalent to running the gold miners on overtime. As we've seen, as the market cap of an asset increases, it becomes much less volatile. This is something we've seen with Amazon, with Facebook, Apple, Google, a lot of internet stocks, a lot of software stocks, even a lot of biotech stocks. They become much less volatile over time as their market caps increase. Bitcoin itself, as we said, has become much less volatile over time. Back in 2011, 2012, 2013, it could have much larger moves than it does now. Bitcoin will continue to become less volatile as adoption increases. And one reason it's so volatile now is because most of the world's value is being stored outside of Bitcoin. And as people move this value into Bitcoin and out of Bitcoin in waves, it has a disproportionate effect on Bitcoin's price. But as more and more value gets stored in Bitcoin and as its overall market cap increases, this volatility should decrease. Now, if you want to make money with Bitcoin and you want to make a lot of money over the coming decade, this is not something you should wait to see in order to invest. If you're waiting for Bitcoin to become less volatile, you're going to miss out because it's only going to become less volatile and much higher market cap. Something very similar happened to Amazon. And a lot of new investors, they want to make sure that something's safe, quote unquote safe, before they invest in it, or just the asset price is too wild for them. But this is how you miss out. It's the same with Tesla. Tesla is less volatile now than it used to be. But if you wait for a company, if you wait for a technology to succeed, then it already gets priced in and you're buying something that is fully priced. Whereas Bitcoin right now is hugely, hugely underpriced versus the technology and the promise. The evolution of money, a lot of scholars have hypothesized it goes something like this. A new form of money, it starts off as a collectible, just something that's cool, maybe like a shiny gold nugget that you collect just because it's nice for jewelry or it looks cool. And then it evolves to a store of value, then from there to a medium of exchange and a unit of account. And this seems, as many people have pointed out, this seems to be what we're witnessing now with Bitcoin. And this is a very, very special time. If you're focused on Bitcoin's price volatility, you're missing out on this. We are getting to watch the evolution of a new form of money in real time in our lifetimes. This is something that has not occurred in many tens of thousands or thousands of years. So it's an amazing time to be alive. And I encourage you, don't squander this pivotal moment by wasting your time thinking about Bitcoin's price action, or even worse, thinking about dog coins and NFTs and all these side technologies that will never have the same impact or importance that a store of value like Bitcoin does, like Bitcoin will. And as I've said, store value is the biggest use case and category in the universe. This is something that will be used. It's much more important than utility tokens. It's much more important than JPEGs with digital signatures. Store of value is where future inventors and future humanity will continue to store their value. So it really has an infinite potential market cap. This passage of this creation of money, or this evolution of money from collectible to store value to medium of exchange. Vijay Boyapati talks about it in his famous article, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. You can get his book now as well as out. And he quotes William Stanley Jevons, who says, historically speaking, gold seems to have served firstly as a commodity valuable for ornamental purposes, in other words, a collectible. Secondly, as stored wealth or stored value. Thirdly, as a medium of exchange. And lastly, as a measure of value or unit of account. And he goes through to talk about the evolution of Bitcoin as well, from collectible to stored value to medium of exchange to unit of account. And this is drawing, I think a lot of this is drawing on Nick Szabo's paper, which is another seminal paper, if you haven't read it, Shelling Out the Origins of Money. Very, very interesting paper on the history and evolution of money and how Bitcoin fits into it as well. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.